All right, so now I'm going to share my screen and start the PowerPoint. And we're going to be sort of in and out of role play, but it's going to be as if you are the students and we are doing the presentation. So we are volunteers. We did the league, we reviewed the chat. We are volunteers from the League of Women Voters of Greater Pittsburgh. The League is not for women only, and we welcome any member 16 years old and older who agrees with our mission. So then, wait, whoops, sorry. Back to this one. So the name of our presentation is #MakeGovernmentWorkForYou, members. And your world has been tilted for 1.5 years now, and your lives have been altered in so many ways that it's nearly impossible to remember what normal was like. We're sort of getting there now. But not only have you been asked to meet the challenges of a global pandemic, challenges that have included your missing out on visits from family and friends, but you've also had to witness a significant rise in political division and civil unrest. And it's taken a toll on us all. We just want you to know that we do sympathize with what you're experiencing, and we applaud your ability to hang in there, to be flexible, but to talk about it. We are not here today to add more to your plate. Our goal is to show you a way through some of these challenges. Through the power of your vote, you have a say in the future of our country. Your vote is your voice. So our goal today is talk about 3 things: why voting is a powerful way to make government work for you, how to understand elections, and how to register to vote. And I'd like to do a little head count. So if you can just write in the chat, if you are a registered voter, go ahead and do that right now. And I'm not going to say waterfall, just say yes. Just type yes in the chat if you're a registered voter.
We have lots of yeses.
I'm not surprised.
Yes.
The League of Women Voter of Greater Pittsburgh is a nonprofit 501c3 organization and is nonpartisan, neither supporting nor opposing candidates or political parties. As we said, we know you have lots on your mind and you have a great deal to handle in your daily life. But we want to talk to you and tell you that voting is a gift. It's a gift to you just for being born in the United States. Or maybe you know someone who wasn't born here, but has completed the very long path to become a naturalized citizen. We hope you all know that only US citizens may vote in our elections, despite the false narrative from various sources. No one can take away this gift. It's yours throughout your life. In Pennsylvania, the only time a citizen temporarily loses the right to vote is if convicted of a felony and serving a jail term. Voting rights are restored as soon as a citizen's, quote, feet hit the street. And maybe we don't talk about this enough. Voting is also a civic duty, like jury duty, where citizens are called to serve on a jury that fairly represents the community. Voting is a civic duty too. So congratulations. Voting is the chance to join with all who want to have a say in the future of our nation. We love this quote from Kofi Annan, who was a UN Secretary General from Ghana. No one's born a good citizen. No nation's born a democracy. Rather, both are processes that continue to evolve over a lifetime, and young people must be included from birth. So we are citizens, but what does that mean? What does that mean to you? I'm going to ask Susan Duncan and Michelle Knoll to answer first, and then I'm going to open it to the chat. So what does it mean to be a citizen?
Being a citizen means that I have certain rights and responsibilities.
Okay, Michelle.
It means that I am obligated to participate in my democracy.
Okay, thank you for your answers. And now everybody type in the chat, don't press enter, and I will say waterfall in a minute. So type what does it mean to you to be a citizen, and make it short. Waterfall.
You belong. I can vote. Ability to add to democracy. Part of the group. Responsibility to treat all equally. I belong. I have rights and responsibilities. These are great answers.
Thank you very much. As a citizen of the United States, there are no age, gender, race, intellectual, educational, economic, social, sexual orientation barriers to this title. You are a citizen. And we're here to tell you that you never own your citizenship more than when you participate in our democracy by voting. We are the we in We the People, all of us together. Here's some principles of our constitutional democracy. They're great words, right? Give you a chance to read that. Not only are we citizens, but we're citizens within a democracy. The rule of law means there are laws and regulations that all citizens must follow. But Americans are known for their independence and self-reliance. So how do these American qualities of independence fit with a constitution that was written for the good of the many? So here's an example of how we can balance individual rights with the common good. Driving a car. Before people get behind the wheel of a car, they must be a certain age, pass a driving test, and get a license, all laws. Every time they drive, they must follow the rules of the road, more laws, obey speed limits and signs, and allow people to cross in crosswalks, fasten seatbelts, and in some states, they can't text. What would happen if people felt free to just ignore these laws? The result might be gridlock, traffic jams, and accidents with harm to drivers and others. The bottom line is that we are free to go where we want to go if we follow the rules of the road. Americans have different views about everything, including democracy, but that's okay. Citizens don't always agree on the issues or how to approach civic problems, but we have to agree to work together to solve these problems if we protect the principles of our democracy. So you might have witnessed or heard about the great divide in opinion about the presidential election of 2020. Would you agree that there are great divides between the political party bases and how to solve problems like COVID-19, economic inequality, continuing racial injustices, and many other issues? Or maybe you feel that those aren't even problems that concern you. If you feel comfortable with this question, please answer in the chat. This is just a chat. On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 is the lowest and 5 is the highest, how much have political divisions in our country personally affected you, affected relationships with your family and friends? So go ahead and type in the chat how political divisions in our country have personally affected you. And 1 is lowest, 5 is highest. Don't
Got
press
fives and threes and
Oh,
ones,
okay.
4s, 6s. Okay.
Oh,
4, 5s. Oh, brother.
Yeah. okay.
Yes,
Thank you for sharing our
quite the
start.
range. Good
All right.
answers.
Our experiences are like that. We know this isn't easy. All right, I'm going to jump out of the role play for a minute and explain this slide. We adapt our presentations depending on the high school, the level of the classes, the time we have, and where we are in the election cycle. So we pull slides in and out. This is an example of a slide for a school that might need some just basic civics 101. All right, so back into the role play. You may remember from your civics or history classes how our government is divided. It's important to remember that our founding fathers were so worried about the abuse of power, having broken away from a tyrannical king, and so worried about any one person or group having too much control, that they divided power between federal and state governments and then separated the government functions into 3 branches. And we would explain to the kids, it's kind of using a sports model. The executive is sort of the person who enforces the rules like a coach. The legislative is sort of like the rule book for sports. They make the laws. The judicial is like the referee or the umpire. And then we talk a little bit about to pay attention to the words in those boxes, elected officials. We, the people, through the power of our voice and through our vote, hire these elected officials to represent us. That's what a representative democracy is. And the reminder is that even though federal judges are appointed by a sitting president, the president and the senators that confirm the appointments are elected by the people. And then we go into part 2. So who has the power? We have the power, including the power to correct mistakes and missteps. So this is the checks and balances that's built into our government, essential for the smooth running of our democracy. Each branch of government has unique responsibilities, which include keeping watch on the other branches to make sure that the balance of power is maintained and that elected officials are accountable for abuses of power. We, the people, through the design of our representative democracy, have power when we vote for the elected officials who faithfully carry out their constitutional responsibilities and who best represent us and our interests. So what does government do for you? Did you ever stop and think about all the ways government actually helps citizens? There's examples: product safety, food safety, etc. Do we tend to take these actions for granted and think that government is bad? Government doesn't help people. So let's get back down to the granular level here, starting with this morning when you woke up. How have government rules and regulations affected you? Here's an example. You woke up and you brushed your teeth. Well, a lot of product testing went into the toothbrush and the toothpaste, etc. So Michelle, G, and Doug, could you give us some answers about how government affects you, how government laws and regulations affected you this morning, today? Michelle.
Sure. Well, when I woke up this morning to go to work, it occurred to me that a long time ago, someone made some laws so that I work 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, 5 days a week, and I'm not working 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, or maybe don't get any time off.
Thank you. Doug.
Yeah, I'm going to cheat and actually go back to last week, and I'll just note where I live, we had some very big storms, and I note that the government is the agencies that warned us about it, and they're the ones who led the response and the cleanup.
Thank you. Super examples. All right, let's type in the chat real quickly. How did government help you today? And I'll say waterfall in a second. Waterfall.
Road safety, safety regulations, medicines. I walked in a park, traffic, clean water, paved the road I drove on, seatbelts, stoplights, health, well-being, and safety. All good answers. Send kids to school on the bus. Absolutely. Good.
Awesome. Thank you. Awesome. And I always like to point out the wonderful Social Security check. So maybe we just have to stop sometimes and remember all of the things that government does for us. So who helped government decide that these are the important issues to be addressed? We, the people, provide that feedback through organizations like the League of Women Voters, and they've been there to help from 1920. This picture is the very first National League of Women Voters slate of issues that they felt were most important for those first-time voters. It may not surprise you that these are the issues: child welfare, education, home and high prices, women in meaningful occupations, and public health. Sounds familiar. So now let's just talk a little bit about whether to vote or not to vote. That is the question. Voting is how a citizen participates in a democracy, but you are in no way required to vote, unlike places in Australia or South America, countries where it's compulsory and you can be fined if you don't vote. Your vote is your voice, but it's also your choice. So the first question is, I'm going to give it to Susan D. Why do you think older people choose to vote?
I think we choose to vote because we see it as a way to have our voices be heard, to have our issues addressed. Because our parents did, we learned that it was something we needed to do. Basically, we know it's our right as a citizen, and we just want to participate in the process.
Okay, thank you. So I would like everybody in the audience to type in the chat why they think older people choose not to vote. What are some of the barriers for older people to vote? And go ahead and type, and I'll say waterfall in a second. Why do older people choose not to vote? Waterfall.
Feel that their vote doesn't matter, can't get out of the house. Lack of transportation to polls, can't get to the polls, hard to get there. We've got a theme here. Lost interest. They have become disillusioned with government. The polls, can't get to the polls. Very
Very-
common thread, yes.
Yeah, very interesting. All right, now I'd like you to type in the chat why you think it's kind of known that young people don't vote in the numbers that they could. And we're going to go into that. Type in the chat why you think young people that you know, your grandchildren or whatever, have difficulty getting into the polls. What makes them not want to vote? Go ahead and type, and I'll say waterfall in a second. Waterfall.
That it won't make a difference. They don't know how to vote. They don't know the candidates or the issues, can't get to the polls. They need reminders. They don't consider it cool. Don't think anything is really important. I think those are
Interesting.
some great answers.
Interesting. Research says it's not apathy. Young people agree with what you said. Sometimes they don't know the issues. They don't know the candidates. Voting is complicated, right? And they might feel their vote just doesn't matter, and they may not trust our democratic process. So, but let's remember what can happen if you choose not to vote. You won't have a say in how the governments run or what the direction of the country will be. But not voting may result in a winner you least agree with, and it allows those to win who may not have really wanted you to vote. So here's where we talk about two words. You might not be familiar with these words, skeptical and cynical. At first, they sound like they're similar, but they really aren't. We believe skeptical means that you are open, unsure, and questioning. And we believe cynical means that you are closed, negative, and have no interest. Stephen Colbert has a terrific quote. Cynicism masquerades as wisdom, but is the farthest thing from it, because cynics don't learn anything, because cynicism is a self-imposed blindness, a rejection of the world because we are afraid it will hurt us or disappoint us. And Chris Rock, comedian, says they don't want you to vote, and if they did, it wouldn't be on a Tuesday in November. We've run into a lot of young people who say voting is not for me. That is something we have heard quite a bit. And do you feel that your vote doesn't matter or won't count? You're not alone. But please don't let elected officials count on you to be so cynical that you don't exercise your right to vote, because that's how you allow others to take away your power. You have a right to be an active citizen in our democracy. Please don't give up that right to vote. These folks were not cynical or skeptical about voting. They were determined. They overcame barriers from those who would try to suppress the vote. If you think your vote doesn't matter, well, it did to these folks who had to fight to make their voices heard. And believe it or not, some elections are decided by a small number of votes, especially these ones that are coming up, these municipal elections. Okay, I'll jump out of the role play and say, if we were speaking to an AP class or to colleges, we would go into more detail. We talk about the struggle from the suffragists. We talk about how the 2013 decision by the Supreme Court sort of took away many provisions in the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And we talk about these pictures in more detail. We even talk about the Florida returning citizens who a supermajority said yes, they would be allowed to vote, ex-felons, but the Supreme Court ruled for the state legislature, who wrote a law that said they had to pay fines and fees. So voter suppression is alive and well. So now I would like to jump out of the PowerPoint, but first take a look at these issues. They're not necessarily in a national, state, local. That doesn't matter as much. But pick two issues that you feel strongly about, 2 or 3 if you have to, of the most important to you, issues that you feel are really essential. And then write them down or keep them in your head. And I'm going to go to gallery view. I'm going to jump out of the PowerPoint. And so we can have everybody participate in person. Before we jump out, Michelle G., what would you say your issues are?
The environment and voting rights.
Michelle K.
Education and gun safety.
and Doug?
Climate change and voting rights, and actually elections in a larger sense, election security.
Gotcha. All right, let me stop the share. I would like everybody to click on gallery view, and you can turn on your cameras and unmute yourselves. And in the classroom, this is what we do. We would go around and ask each person to tell us at least two of their most important issues. But in the interest of time, just jump in and tell us some issues that are important to you. You can just shout them out.
Immigration.
Environment.
Climate change.
Safety.
I know
Climate
that-
change, voting rights, gun safety.
Yep.
Voter rights.
Climate change, voting rights.
COVID-19.
Climate change / environment, voting rights.
Anybody else? There's a definite pattern there, right? If you were talking to the youngest people, you know, grandchildren, children, what do you think their issues would be?
Climate change.
We do.
LGBTQ.
Yep, we hear that a lot.
I have two, and that would be different between the two.
Mhm.
One would be probably be voting rights, elections, and the other would be things like sustainable agriculture, climate change.
Mhm.
They're two different kids.
Yep.
Student
Jobs.
loans.
Jobs.
Yep, jobs, student loans,
Jobs.
we hear that a lot.
Education.
Yeah,
Money for college.
yep. Definitely. Very good. Sometimes we ask the kids what they think their grandparents care about, and we always hear taxes, Social Security, Medicare, right? Those are the answers that we get from the kids. Anybody else want to say anything before we go back?
Yeah, you wouldn't get those answers from my kids.
No, okay,
They're not talking about high school.
They know
kids,
what I think
Sue.
about.
right. They
Talking
know
about
what you
high
care
school
about.
and college kids.
Right. No, she says they know what she cares about. Okay, now go back to, we're getting good at this. Go back to speaker view and mute yourselves and shut off your cameras again. So we could see that our issues may not be the same, right? And, you know, who are politicians listening to? So let me go back and share my screen. And this slide tells a little bit about the power in numbers. So we know there's going to be more young voters, and we've had charts that show the young people population rising and the older folks falling. But the problem is the kids don't vote in the numbers that they need to kind of overcome the older people's vote. But the fact is, in 2020, 67% of eligible voters, or 161 million of us, voted in the highest turnout since the 1900s. But if you look at this chart, the purple are the older voters and the blue are the youngest voters, and the others are in the middle. And you can see that turnout, and the up and down are the presidential, the federal elections, you know, and the state and local elections. You can see that the turnout is rising for everybody. And young people, I don't know if anyone knows how many young people were registered, but 75% of young people 18 to 24 were registered before the 2020 election. Doug just gave us these numbers. Only 51.4% actually voted. So there's this definite gap in turnout. The oldest people, of course, probably 85 to 90% are registered to vote. And the number Doug gave us for 2020 was 76% voted. So they are the super voters. Perhaps that's who elected officials are listening to. but let's get our children and grandchildren to join the Super Voter Club. All right, I'd like Susan Fair is going to do this page. Go ahead, Susan.
Okay, so here in Allegheny County, well, actually everywhere, 2021 is an off year and election day is Tuesday. But we have many key positions that will be decided on the ballot depending on where you live. May include the mayor, Allegheny County Sheriff, many judges, half of city councils and county councils, township borough leadership, and school board directors, which we always try to point out to the kids because that's something that definitely affects them directly. These are positions that affect our daily lives the most because these elected officials set the tax rate, set school policy, enforce and interpret the laws. So I know that everyone here is aware of all these things, but that's where we are. So Tuesday's the day.
Thank you, Susan. And Susan Duncan is going to present this page. And Susan, all right, go ahead.
Okay, this is where we usually say to the students, but you're thinking, I have no idea who I'll vote for or what the issues are. Just take what you do when you buy a new phone. You do a little research to help you be a better informed person. And in this case, we want you to be a better informed voter. Time to get you involved once again. So I'd like you to type in chat, but again, wait for waterfall. Where do you get your information? Social media, friends, family, television, radio, magazines or newspapers, political ads, websites. Where do you get your information? Please type in chat and wait for waterfall. Joanne? Waterfall, sorry.
Newspapers, I saw it, magazines, Vote 411, newspapers, some websites, science-based, television and newspapers.
Okay, would like to switch the question now and have you think about young people. Where do they get their information? Again, please type in chat and I'll be more alert on waterfall in a minute. Waterfall.
Social media, internet, friends, parents, social media, word of
Yes.
mouth on their phone. Instagram, good.
Do you guys
I'm
hear
still
the
back on
difference?
newspaper. It's the first time I've ever seen it used.
Do you guys hear the difference? One of the emphasis that we try to have with the kids is how do they verify? How do any of us verify the information? In other words, how do you know what you read or hear is true? Think of the difference between the reliable information that you seek out for your health or for your finances. And then how are you influenced by other sources of information? An example of how we can be influenced unfairly, people tell you about a new theory on COVID and you believe it, even though it is the opposite of what the CDC is saying. What strategies do you use to figure out what is fact or what is fiction? We created this infographic to try to help the kids decipher information. One of the real keys is at the top, where the source is from. Is it a company? Is it an educational organization? Is it the government? Or is it a group with a purpose or a research? Before an election, try to check out this fact or fiction infographic. We have links to information resources and a media bias website that puts different newspapers or news sources on a chart from very conservative to very liberal. We have election and candidate information as well. Sites like factchecker.org, Ballotpedia, TurboVote, allsides.org. But fact or fiction, if you look at it for just a second, we're looking at labeling in our society more and more, where name calling or exaggeration or some way of putting a label on someone creates fear and it's not information. Also repetition, simply because we hear things repeated over and over again, it does not make it true. When we're dealing with the kids, we give them some infographics and tell them that they can all be found in the voter resource library. Some of the resources we provide are digital resources to help them follow up on our lessons. We also have posters for classrooms that have QR codes on them on how to register or how to get other information. And these are ways we try to extend our civic education content. For teachers, we get another assist to them under the voter resource library. We have a section called resource websites for teachers that have actual civic education lessons ready to go. They don't have to do anything but download and look at them. So we feel we've been a great resource to all of the teachers who suddenly are trying finally to teach civics again. My bias, sorry, Amy.
Thank you, Susan. Wonderful. Good job, ladies. So now we would shift to this would have been a half an hour, hopefully. I mean, sometimes it's more, but then if we have another 10 minutes in a 40-minute class, we would shift to how to register to vote. And I'm not going to go through that. I'm not going to role play that. I'm just going to say that, we tell them what the qualifications are. We talk a little bit about closed primaries and how to, participate in those where 80% of the candidates are chosen. We tell them about how all registered voters can vote on a ballot question, constitutional amendment, or special election. And we kind of give a shout out to being a poll worker. 17-year-olds can, with permission from a guardian and a high school principal, can also be a poll worker, which would be a great way to see democracy in action. The Turbo Vote is the website that colleges and universities are using, Pitt, Carnegie Mellon, and we found that high schools have no objections to us putting up this website. And it gives free text messages, which is so key to getting kids to the polls. I mean, if you sign up, you'll be getting emails or text messages that say, did you register? Do you want mail-in voting? Do you need a paper registration form? These are all by deadlines. They talk about deadlines. And they tell kids to make a plan to get to the polls. So we walk them through the first 4 slides and register them in Turbo Vote, and then they get sent to votepa.gov, which is what we then walk through. We walk through online voter registration or using a paper form. It was beautiful when we could use paper forms because we had volunteers. We had 40 volunteers who would help us come in, help the kids fill out the forms correctly, answer questions, and we knew how many students we registered. In the virtual environment, that has been really hard to do, but we tell them, mail it, don't forget the stamp, there's your county elections office. This page is important because they get snail mail, they don't get much mail. And we tell them, make sure you look for this official envelope that holds your voter registration card, ID card. After they turn 18 years old, it might take 3 weeks before they receive this in the mail, but they need to put it in their wallets because it has this valuable information, their ID number, their address, political party they've chosen if they have, and their municipality, ward, and district. And we say, congratulations, you are now a registered voter. Certain colleges and universities, we have talked a little bit about mail-in ballots, especially students who don't go home and they want to vote in their home district. And then we just, again, talk about these websites and how good they are. We give a big pitch to Vote 411, telling kids that they can find candidate information there. It really is one-stop shop if they want to register through that site. And that they can do a personalized ballot that will be emailed to them. And especially in a municipal election with so many candidates, that is really helpful. So the bottom line is vote to be heard. Your vote is a gift and a duty. Participate in our democracy and make government work for you. Do all you can to be an active, informed voter. Grab your friends, get to the polls, spread the word to friends and family. We want everyone to become a super voter and vote in every single election. And democracy is not a spectator sport. We really appreciate being here today, but we have just a few more slides. We always do a little pre-test and a post-test. And the pre-test are 3 questions. Susan Duncan is expert at this. And we just kind of elicit some background information from the kids and prepare them for what we're going to do. The post-test is basically a feedback form. We did them on paper. I have reams of paper with kids, what the kids have written to us, which are really quite positive and amazing and kept us going. But we would do this in the virtual environment. It was a little bit harder. From the 5 schools we visited in the spring, we received feedback from 2. And Doug Spindler made these slides, and we have them in the civic education model. And the questions are, what surprised you the most? What actions can you take or will you take as you think about 2021 and this presentation and your role in our democracy? And what's your feedback? And he made a nifty little chart there that shows we received feedback from 67 of the 225 students from Montour and 25 of the 59 students from Urban Pathways, and they were characterized as positive, neutral, or negative. So we had an 81% positive rate. It's still, if you're used to doing feedback, they usually follow a normal curve a little more, where you get a bunch of, yeah, we loved you, and then, yeah, you were okay, and then, okay, and I really didn't like you. So this didn't have such a spread, and that has sort of been how our feedback forms have gone from the beginning of the time that we started doing this, which has been encouraging. So Joanne is going to comment on how we view success, especially in these times. Joanne.
Thanks, Amy. And Amy, you left out the poll worker story.
Oh, I did leave out the poll worker story.
I think you need to share it.
You may share it.
Okay. One of the things that we learned sometimes is language. You always have to be very careful and succinct. I think it was you, Susan.
It was me.
It was Susan.
Susan and me, yes.
A story with a group of students, her experience about being a poll worker in the last election. And after the program was done, the teacher came back on and she said, gosh, I hope you didn't hear the students laughing. I hope you weren't upset. And we were like, what? And she said, well, I had to explain to them POLL worker and not a POLE worker. So
yes,
you just never know what you're going to come up against. So it's always fun that the students certainly keep us on our toes and keep us thinking. And it actually, our experiences have really opened up our opportunities about how we measure success. Measuring success is an essential component that directs the growth and development and sustainability of any program. So we take it very seriously. And prior to COVID, it was easy. We had handwritten registration forms. We saw the kids' faces. We counted those heads. We counted those registration forms, and we had our numbers. But with the turn to virtual programming and this explosion, certainly from our chapter into the electronic age, I think, folks, we have to realize that we are not always going to have that solid number, that piece of paper to be counted. And that's really, it's a good thing. It has forced us to look at a broader scale and to remember that there are so many ways of measuring impact, or to believe that you are being as impactful as possible. And, some of the ways that we're doing that, Amy mentioned the feedback forms, but it's also the extra communications we're getting from teachers, the callbacks we're getting from teachers, where we've been in the classroom, some of them now 4 or 5 years in a row. And they want us to come back. New places in this last year that said, hey, we want you to come back. And we're starting to schedule again for 21 and 22. This fall alone, Carnegie Mellon, the University of Pittsburgh, La Roche, Chatham, and Duquesne University have all reached out to us and asked for a program. And this is in addition to voter registration tables. This is separate. They are asking us to come in to their universities and talk to their students. And so we are really, we're really, that's an amazing thing for our chapter to be looked at as we've always had this wonderful history of being relevant in the community, but we're really sustaining that. We're keeping that moving forward, and we can't lose sight of that. It's hard to know how many students are streaming us. Amy and I talked to a room of one at the University of Pittsburgh, but all the kids were streaming. And we don't know, some of that was being recorded, and it's also, being seen after the production. So it's hard to get those numbers. So we have to know that just by being there, by putting ourselves out there, that really matters. Our community partners are telling us that the voter registration materials we're providing them are making a difference in their community. Again, they're coming back to us and asking for assistance. This past month, we delivered 760 voter registration bags to be delivered to the eligible seniors in the Pittsburgh Public Schools. And that's information they would not have had. And so, these are really becoming, our community involvement is really a way that we have to be looking at measuring that level of success. It's not always going to be in those numbers. It's going to be in our actions, in our activity, and how we're getting our word out there. And as long as we are staying on point with our mission, and education is certainly a part of that, we are doing our jobs. We are being successful. And that's how we're doing it these days.
Hey.
So, Amy, you're muted.
Sorry. Thank you, Joe, very much. Sounds like a little pep talk for us. And I loved it. And so we have one more slide. Part of the thing that Michelle has done with her advocacy team is to have action items after each one of these presentations. So our action item is this happy birthday card that has gotten a lot of play. It's, I thought I saw it was about 400 and some downloads now. I think maybe a little more, I don't know. But there's two versions. This first version on the left is you can go to vote 411. So that could be for, any student across the US. So if you have grandkids or nieces and nephews, you could send them that. And this one on the right has votepa.gov. So that would be anybody in Pennsylvania. And all they do is use the QR scanner on your phone, and it takes you right to the website, either one of those websites where they can register to vote. So what better way to say happy birthday to someone you care about? We are going in 2022 to make, hopefully, if we get funding, to make posters for every high school in Allegheny County. We'll make 10 posters for each high school that wants them for their classrooms of this birthday card, where the kids could just hold up a phone and register to vote right there.